Please welcome, to deliver today's keynote address, the National World War II Museum President and CEO, Stephen Watson.
Well, good afternoon. It's truly a privilege to be here at this special place to commemorate this important day and recognize such an accomplished group of individuals. Just a couple of thank yous to start. I want to thank Mike and Andrew Manitos for inviting me here to speak today and for your leadership of this association for the last 14 years. And I'd also like to recognize and thank a longtime trustee of the National World War II Museum, John Georges, and his wife Dathel and his sister Alexa for making this connection and serving as tireless advocates of not only our institution, but also the city of New Orleans. And I think it's safe to say you've certainly carried on your family's proud legacy of service, leadership, and dedication to our community. And finally, everyone that is associated with the OXI Washington Foundation for drawing attention to the important role Greece played in bringing about Allied victory in World War II, and for celebrating those who continue to exemplify their legacy. So, of course, many of us here today are familiar with the story of OXI, when Prime Minister Ioannis Metaxas refused to surrender Greece to Mussolini's fascist forces. But I just want to take a moment to reflect on why days like this are important and what resonates most about this history for me. We all know Greece as the birthplace of democracy, and its citizens have shown time and again that honor is not to be taken for granted. Going back to the Battle of Marathon, the Greeks have fought to preserve democracy from the threats of foreign invaders. And that Greek spirit of resistance has been unwavering across thousands of years and was essential on that fateful day, October 28, 1940, when Greece was tested once again. In the months and years that followed, people throughout Greece rose to the challenge with courage and strength. Early in the war, the Greek army, the Royal Hellenic Air Force, the Greek Navy, all secured victories against much larger Italian forces, inspiring many, including Americans, around the world with their grit and resilience. Greek women hauled ammunition, guns, materiel, and supplies up the Pindus Mountains and guided Greek forces along the best routes. And even after Greeks fell under Nazi occupation, members of the Greek resistance continued putting up a fight and killed over 20,000 Axis soldiers. But I think, as many of you here know, it was during the German airborne invasion of Crete that resistance truly made its mark. It was the first time that German troops encountered large-scale resistance from a civilian population. And because they suffered such significant losses, it was the last time that the Nazis attempted a major airborne assault during the war. This collective resistance was essential, and it also impacted the larger war. Faced with Greek resistance, Hitler changed his timeline, delayed Operation Barbarossa, his attack on the Soviet Union, no doubt having a major impact on the war in Europe. And I think a few things that stand out through these actions. Greece showed the world what was possible with a unity of purpose, with a commitment of every individual to do what they could, and most importantly, a willingness to defend freedom and democracy, even in the face of incredible odds. There is no doubt these were hard-won lessons. Greece suffered hundreds of thousands of casualties due to war against Italy, the German invasion, starvation, and Nazi genocidal policies. The fight required enormous grit and strength, and a deep commitment to core values like honor, integrity, duty, pride, dignity, and a word that will be familiar to you all, philotimo, a word that is so inherently Greek that it's really even difficult to translate, but essentially means a love of honoring one's responsibilities. And I think today's awards recipients may be separated by time, but they are connected by their shared commitment to these principles and to public service. At just 19 years old, Denis Georges believed in his duty to his country. He joined the Greek resistance army during World War II and led a guerrilla movement against the Germans and Italians in the Kalamata and southern Peloponnese areas of Greece. His patriotism continued after the war, and he served in the Royal Greek Air Force during Korea before he moved to New Orleans and became a successful businessman. And we're grateful for that. As many Greeks moved to America and became Greek Americans, they carried this integrity to their new home. After Georgiotis emigrated to America, he served in the U.S. Army during Vietnam and earned a Purple Heart for his bravery. Thank you, sir. And of course, Greek Americans, as you've just heard, continue to fight for democratic ideals today. The son of a World War II Greek resistance fighter, General Andrew Pappas, currently leads the U.S. Army Forces Command and valiantly served in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Thank you, sir. And here we stand today to honor these men at this sacred place nearly 80 years after the war ended. The National World War II Memorial honors the 16.1 million men and women who wore a U.S. Armed Forces uniform during World War II, the 405,399 Americans who died in the fight for freedom, and the millions who supported the war effort from home. Today, of those 16.1 million World War II veterans, we have about 60,000 survivors. Less than half of 1% are still with us today. And that's why our mission at the National World War II Museum in New Orleans is to honor their service, to honor their sacrifice and their victory by telling the full story of the American experience in the war. Why was it fought? How was it won? And what does it mean today, so that all generations understand the price of freedom and be inspired by what they learn? You know, we often say at the museum that we're charged with a sacred responsibility to ensure that the lessons of World War II aren't forgotten. As more people with firsthand memories of the war pass on, our role as storytellers takes on new meaning. And it's more critical than ever that we preserve and share the personal stories of everyday people who accomplished extraordinary things. So today we have the privilege of honoring three men who made extraordinary contributions to their countries. Throughout their lives and careers, these men have demonstrated the heroism, pride, selflessness, and virtue that were on display in Greece and the United States during World War II, and we're grateful for it. As I'm sure many of you here know, President Roosevelt once said, when the entire world had lost hope, the Greek people dared to question the invincibility of the German monster, raising against it in the proud spirit of freedom. And it was against that backdrop that Roosevelt delivered his famous For Freedom speech in January of 1941, almost a full year before we were attacked at Pearl Harbor and entered the war. At that time, opinions at home were divided about whether we should get involved in a war overseas, and the defeat of Nazi Germany was far from certain. Many felt we simply shouldn't get involved. But Roosevelt knew something. He knew that what was at stake was worth fighting for, and that America would rally around the ideals of freedom, not just for its own citizens, but as he said in his speech, for every person, everywhere in the world. Those ideals, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear, were so important to our vision for peace following the war that they were inscribed on the back of the Victory Medal presented to all 16 million men and women that served during World War II. I would say a permanent reminder to the ideals that they had fought to defend. So all of us who care about freedom, democracy, human rights must ensure that these hard-won ideals are never taken for granted. As we all know, the Greeks went to great lengths to preserve them. And that courage, that sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment to freedom is always worth celebrating. Thank you.